Hello, everyone. My name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about The Unvanquished, written by William Faulkner. Now, before I go into summary analysis of this work, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and/or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. All right, The Unvanquished, very interesting work here. This is looking at the Union Army versus the Confederates, the Civil War in America. And this work it's focusing on the war. It's focusing on the Sarторus family, John Sartorus, his son Bayard. The son's best friend is a slave by the name of Ringo, and the grandmother. So John, he's in the war front lines. He's fighting. The grandmother's taking responsibility of the family. Bayard, again, his best friend is Ringo, and they're just, young boys having fun. And now there's a whole war going on, and the grandmother has to take certain actions. The Confederate Army, they're not doing so well within the work here. John comes back home. He buries the silver on the property. But soon they have to leave because the war is getting very close to home. The soldiers show up, they burn their house down, and they burn other properties. And the usual tragedies and horrors of war, soldiers raping women, stealing the silver, the usual darkness and depravity and, just horrors of war, war, especially when it's like an invading party attacking. That's when a lot of soldiers will just lose their sense of humanity and they do the most nastiest things. And these are Americans, mind you, within this work. Rape, theft, pillaging, killing young boys so that they don't turn into soldiers to come against them. Raping the women and stealing the silver. It's the old habit of all wars that have happened on Earth of murder, pillaging, and rape. Very dark stuff here. And the grandmother, she has to leave with the boys. She loses half of the silver, then she goes and gets it back. She goes into these deals where the Yankees gave her like 10 chests of silver and mules, and she feels guilty because these things didn't belong to her, but they give it to her. And a bunch of slaves that she didn't have. She just wanted her slaves, but then she got a bunch of slaves and she keeps it all. But then the grandmother feels guilty, so she gives some of it to the church. And she's trying to pretty much leave the war and make it somewhere safe with her and Bayard and Ringo. They're trying to go somewhere safe, but wherever they go, the war and bothers them and it gets in the way. Ultimately, the grandmother gets killed. Standing her ground, defending her territory. She gets killed. John comes back from the front lines and he finds Bayard and Ringo, and they end up killing Grumby, the leader of these soldiers that was, during the raping and the stealing and the pillaging. And think about it. This is the Union Army versus the Confederate Army fighting for, over slavery and over the future of the country. And again, when you're in warfare, you're killing young boys, you're, raping and pillaging. War is not pretty. It's never pretty. It's the denigration, the assault, the abuse. I mean, people who come back from war, this is why they're always so messed up. It's because it's during war, the soldiers, I don't know, sometimes some soldiers, the monster in them comes out and they let it all out. All the Some men, for example, especially men who are soldiers, sometimes they lose their composure. Once you know that at any point you can catch a bullet and die, you start doing some really messed up stuff. You go into a village and you just freaking your life just turns into a whole video game where there are no rules apply, because to the soldier, and this is across all empires and all types of armies, sometimes the soldiers just go into a town. They're like, I could be killed anytime. So they go and do anything that's on their minds. And it's usually evil things, sexual things, nasty things, murder, theft, killing, raping. Um, nobody is safe. This ringleader, Grumby, he's the one that was commanding his, um, you know, unruly group of soldiers to do all these things. And ultimately, John and Bayard and Ringo, they nail him to a door. They kill him. They nail him to a door for killing the grandmother and for his other atrocities. Nowadays there are crimes of war. If you do these things after the war is over, you can be prosecuted. Things like, mass rapes and, killing kids and killing babies. But there was a time on Earth when, think about the Roman Empire, the Byzantine, and all the, Attila the Huns, your Genghis Khans, the British Empire, the French Empire. Think about all the conquests into Africa, India, China, even Europeans conquering Europeans, the Germans, and World War One and World War Two. The level of atrocities and assaults and rapes and mass rapes, and there are things that it's better left unsaid. What humans will do when it comes to warfare and just horror. But yeah, by the end, Grumby's killed, the grandmother is dead, the town gets pillaged, and John, Bayard, and Ringo, they go back home with a lot of things a lot of things in their minds, a lot of things to think about. Yeah. In terms of deeper meaning analysis, The Unvanquished it's filled with a lot of things. It's about the change in America, what had to happen for America to become what it is today, what certain communities had to go through, and I mean, there's so many ways. I mean, think about Bayard and Ringo. Ringo is Bayard's best friend, but at the same time, Ringo is Bayard's slave because he's a slave. So that is his best friend. That is Bayard's best friend, but at the same time, can a slave be a master's best friend? Because at any point in time, the master can exercise his authority over the slave. So does that change the slave's behavior? I mean, if yes, your master is your best friend, or even if the John, Bayard's father is the master, as Ringo, as a slave, you know that you're not free. So does that affect your behavior? And of course, I would believe it does. Looking at the grandmother, the way in which she takes the 10 chests of silver, the way in which she tried to run away, the way in which she tried to defend herself. There's a lot of things about her. It's not that she's evil. It's just that's the way of life. And again, slavery was horrible. slavery in America was an atrocity, but the time period was really different. It was a world filled with people with different mindsets and different ways to look at the world. It's not that humans are, or white, black, whatever you call it. It's not that they're just evil. It's just when you're born into a system, um, it's gonna take a massive thing like a civil war, like this war, to change it. Um, because the transatlantic slave trade, the industrial system for slavery in America, it wasn't a small thing. It was a thing that started. It was a continental business. People making millions. It's not just slavery and treating uh, black people as slaves. It was money. It was business. It was family fortunes. It was changing like a global economy. So people weren't just it wasn't just we don't want to treat slaves bad, or we don't want to support slavery again. It was people fighting for their money, for their land, for their way of life. I'm not saying it was good, but I'm saying that don't just think the Civil War was just about, oh, let's free black people. No, it's like people like, oh, you're coming over to take my money because these slaves cost me money, and they're my assets. Because a lot of slave masters in the South, they viewed black people, they viewed their slaves as their capital, as their fortunes. It's like those slaves were their bank accounts. Because let's say each slave was like worth just I don't know the exact amount each slave was worth, but let's say each slave was worth like $1,000 or $10,000. If you had like 1,000 slaves, to you that's your capital being taken. That's your money being taken. So that's why a lot of people, a lot of Confederates, they were fighting for their money, for their farms, for their land, for their capital. Because a lot of them, that's how they saw it. They didn't just see, oh, the Union Army's coming to fight for the freedom of black people. No, they're like, the Union Army's coming over to take my money. So, don't just get sentimental and emotional. There's capital, there's business, there's money, there's finances, there's ways of life, there's people fighting for other things. So this work does, bloodshed, family lines, family ties. But ultimately, this work in particular is about the Sartor's family, and what they had to go through during this war. And not all of them made it out alive. So that's all I have to say about this work. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or a comment. And I'll see you guys in the next video.